During the night, I would work to help summarize all the reports so that new orders could be issued very early the next morning. Then, after daylight, I would often go outside, climb up above the tunnel entrance a few dozen meters, and sunbathe and get a little fresh air. A number of other people would do the same thing. One morning after I had been with Kesselring's staff about 3 weeks, I finished my work at 6 a.m. I had some breakfast and went outside for some fresh air and sun, climbing up the mountainside above the mouth of the tunnel. I planned to stay out for an hour or two, sleeping and getting a tan at the same time. The terrain was rocky, with a few scrub bushes. It was a beautiful day, with clear blue skies and lots of sunshine, and a half dozen or so other people were scattered about the area, getting sun and fresh air. About half an hour later, the air raid siren began to wail. This happened frequently because there was fairly constant Allied air traffic overhead, and since the Allied bombers had always before been on their way somewhere else, I paid little attention to the sirens. Then I realized that the sirens had become constant, which was an indication that this was serious. I rolled over onto my back and searched the skies for the airplanes. They were very high, which indicated to me that they were again on their way somewhere else, until I saw something glittering beneath them. Then I realized they were dropping bombs. I jumped up and tried to run for the tunnel, but it was too late. The bombs were already exploding about me. I threw myself to the ground and tried to hug the earth, which began to boil violently all around me with the explosions, and I could feel the heat of the blast wash over me with each ear-shattering explosion. I dug my face deeper into the earth, trying to burrow into it, squeezing my eyes shut and clenching my teeth. I thought my luck had finally run out. Suddenly it was very quiet. When I opened my eyes, the world was completely dark. Smoke and powder and dust obscured the sky and the sun. I knew I was still alive because I could smell the smoke and burned powder, and I was conscious of thinking, but I could see nothing. Then the sky began to hail rocks that had been blasted into the air by the bombs, and I covered the back of my head with my hands and endured the avalanche. Slowly, a little light began to seep through the darkness, and suddenly it occurred to me that bombers always came in 2 waves. The second wave can see the results of the first and make corrections. I knew I had to get out of there fast or risk enduring the same horror again. Although I could not see more than 3 meters in the darkness, I knew the tunnel was downhill somewhere, and I jumped to my feet and made a dash down the hill. When I hit the road leading to the tunnel, I knew I had to turn left. Then I saw the entrance to the tunnel and leaped for it. But my legs suddenly failed me and I fell into the tunnel entrance. Some people there picked me up and carried me to a first aid station. Then the second wave of bombers came, and the tunnel shook and vibrated from the impact of the bombs. I did not feel any pain, although I was covered with blood. I knew I had been hit by all those falling rocks, and I knew I had felt the heat blast of the bombs and was probably burned, but I was not aware of much else. In such a situation, a soldier just wants to be safe, and he does not care about anything else. He reacts first, and the pain comes later. He feels that something is wrong, but it is not a localized pain. Only when he's out of danger does he begin to feel pain. The medics began to clean and treat my back for the relatively minor rock and burn wounds, and then they discovered that a piece of shrapnel from a bomb had taken a huge chunk out of the calf of my left leg. It was a very deep flesh wound, almost to the bone, but I was fortunate because the bone had not been broken, no artery had been severed, and no nerve had been cut. When I saw that the blood was dark red and not coming out in spurts, I knew that was a good sign. Of the half dozen or so of us who were up there, 2 were never found. Evidently, they had both taken direct hits. The rest of us were all wounded. The medics patched us up the best they could and arranged for us to be taken to a field hospital about 3 kilometers away. When I arrived at the field hospital, I was immediately given a tetanus shot, which was standard procedure for anyone who had been wounded by shrapnel or bullets. I had been given tetanus shots before with no ill effects, but not this time. I was allergic to the type of tetanus serum they gave me, and I started breaking out in wet running sores. They itched, they burned, they hurt, and they were all over my body. I could not sleep because of the pain and the itching. I could not get comfortable in any position. I could hardly eat or drink for 4 days because I had sores in my mouth. They were even inside my nose. This was the worst medical experience of my life, and the doctors became very concerned. They gave me calcium shots as an antidote, and after another day or two, the rash started to clear up. The Allies had begun their offensive in the meantime, and were threatening to break through our defense lines. The bombing and strafing around us at the field hospital were becoming intense. Of course, some of the local population was spying on us, and the location of Kesselring's headquarters was no secret to the Allies. They knew that any German military vehicle could contain staff officers or supplies, so fighter planes chased and strafed every vehicle. From the window of my hospital room, I could see the roads and the tunnel entrance, and I could see this action taking place. Although the Allied fighter pilots honored the big red cross on the roof of the hospital, they attacked everything that moved on the road. They now bombed the tunnel entrance regularly, apparently trying to seal it shut. The army decided to start evacuating patients from the field hospital since the fighting was getting close, so they put 4 of us in an ambulance and we started toward Florence with a driver and a medical corpsman. Of the 4 of us, 2 were severely wounded and bedfast, and 1 was out of his mind from too much combat or from a shell exploding too close to him. I was in the best shape with my leg wound. When we were about halfway to Florence, we were attacked by 2 American fighter planes. The ambulance was clearly marked with a red cross on the roof, but the pilots either did not believe it was really an ambulance or they were just having fun by trying to scare us. When they made the first strafing run, the ambulance driver stopped the ambulance and he and the corpsman ran for cover. The 4 of us who were wounded were left in the ambulance just sitting there helplessly. The 2 who were severely wounded could not stand and I could barely hobble. The crazy man went berserk, and I had to hold him down to keep him from hurting the others. I tried to talk to him and calm him down as I held him. He was just a boy, and he was very frightened. The planes made several passes. We could see the splashes in the road where the .50 caliber bullets hit all around us, but they never hit us. Either the pilots were very poor marksmen, or they were just playing cat and mouse with us and never intended to hit us. Although they may just have been having fun, it was a terrifying experience for us. The hospital at Florence had been converted from the Italian Air Force's military academy. It was a beautiful place, with magnificent buildings and a pool. Now it was a normal military hospital, with many wounded from the fighting. Young Italian girls visited us, although the Italian government had joined the Allies in the war against us. A part of the Italian population still sympathized with us and did not like what their government had done. I practiced my Italian with them. I was in a room with 10 or 12 others. We learned while I was there that the Allies had landed at Normandy on June 6, 1944. This was the third front for us, but of course the news given us was that the Allies had been beaten back with terrible losses. After the first few days, we could sense that things were not going well for us there. We were given no details except that Cherbourg was holding out, and this was deceptive because Cherbourg was on the coast. But then we began to hear about heroic resistance, and we knew that things were going badly for us in France. In addition, we were being pushed up the Italian peninsula, and the Russians were advancing on us from the east. It was evident that the end was approaching.